Hi, thanks for tuning in. This is the US Futures weekly chart analysis for the week ending 24th of April 2026. The first chart is the US dollar index futures. They moved a little higher this week on about average volume, so that was genuine trading. There was no downside follow through in response to last week's bar. So it appears the market found some stability this week. It did trade within the range of the previous bar, which is a feature of many of the charts this week. Many of the charts have come back this week and are trading inside the range of the previous bar in consolidation mode to a large degree. And that may reflect a little bit of uncertainty in the market at the moment. The market is really just not confident to push higher, but it's not so weak as it needs to break down and push lower. Spread narrowed somewhat this week. Price closed just slightly above the zone it was in last week, in this zone, and it's just moved slightly into the one above. It's really just trading within the range of the previous bar to a large extent and not really committing either way to strength or weakness. This is the E-mini S&P 500 index futures. And this week, price spent most of the week in consolidation mode. If you just flip to the daily chart quickly, it's very clear. The market traded in this range all week, within the range of last Friday week's bar. It's traded sideways for the whole week in consolidation mode. Back to the weekly chart. And now you can see what it's actually done on a weekly basis. The market pushed above the highs of the range last week, just slightly. And this week, the market spent the whole week in consolidation mode. Volume was about average, so it was genuine trading, nothing hidden in there. And the market was effectively absorbing any supply that's been drawn out in response to last week's strong up bar. US Treasury 10-year note futures, and this market continues to grind. There's no obvious sign of intent in this market. It's trading sideways to a large degree, both on a shorter term and a longer term basis. Here's the controlling bar or bars, and the market's traded within those bars range for an extended period of time now. There's no great intent being shown towards the upside. There's also no great amount of weakness in this market. And you can see that by the recent trading over the last month. It's really gone nowhere. It's traded in this range here for the most part with no great intent, and volumes remain below the average. So there's not a great deal of activity in this market. There's certainly no force or effort being shown. We'll just have to wait for the market to really show its true colours, which it will do at some stage. Copper price futures. Copper price futures just came back a little bit this week after trading right up to the highs of the range last week. The market traded in consolidation mode with quite a narrow spread and a reduction in volume. So that's showing you that selling pressure at the highs of the range is relatively low. And given any sort of favourable trading conditions, I expect this market will make an attempt to push higher in response. If trading conditions remain uncertain to a large degree, sideways is your most likely direction. But I think this market is setting itself up for a push higher or an attempt to do so. Gold price futures. Gold price futures traded inside the range of the previous bar this week, as did many of the markets in consolidation mode. It effectively came back and tested this line in the background. Price continues to trade sideways in a range, as do many of these markets at the moment, a little bit range bound. It's not testing the level above at all. It's really just trading in consolidation mode on low volumes. So activity is reduced and the market is showing no great intent at the moment. Silver price futures. And silver price futures, very similar to gold, perhaps slightly stronger. Traded inside the range of the previous bar this week. It's trading just slightly below this level here, which is the breakdown line from this bar. And price is really trading in consolidation mode, similar to gold, on relatively low volumes, showing activity is low and intent is not being shown. Like crude price futures closed higher this week. It's really starting to establish a range in here. The market is respecting the June 2022 highs to a large degree. You can see that there. We're starting to get some real clustering of closes in here, showing you that that's the important level to the market at this point in time. Price traded within the range of the previous bar this week as an inside bar. On a slight increase in volume, it was almost average, so we'll call it genuine at this point in time. And I expect the market is showing you that this is the level it wants to trade in to a large degree at this point in time. Into the currencies now. This is the Euro-US dollar currency pair, and it also traded within the range of the previous bar this week. Volume remained modest, a little below the average, and it's not showing any great intent either. The lack of supply as price moved lower this week suggests it could attempt to push higher, but that will require to a large degree that the US dollar continues lower, and that perhaps doesn't look like it being the case. So this market is most likely to trade sideways within this range. Looking at the British pound now, very similar to the euro. Price came back, traded inside the range of the previous bar as an inside bar. Volume was slightly increased but remained below the average overall. And I expect this market will probably trade in this little range here to a large degree next week as well, certainly earlier in the week. Selling pressure doesn't appear to be overwhelming in this market, so it could attempt to push higher if there was any weakness in the US dollar, but that doesn't appear to be the case at this point in time. Japanese yen currency futures. They also traded inside the range of the previous bar this week. This market's just holding on to the lows of the range here. It's finding it a little bit vulnerable. Volume was slightly lower and slightly below the average. This market remains weak and it's just barely holding on at this level. Any sort of strength in the US dollar will probably see this market break down. It may do so anyway. It's certainly not looking strong. Aussie dollar currency futures have been relatively strong more recently. You'll note this week that although the bar did trade within the range of the previous bar, spread narrowed considerably, price remained above the highs of the range here, and volume was reduced and slightly below the average. Selling pressure is low. The market's attempting to consolidate right up in the highs of the previous bar, which is generally a sign of strength up here, and above the important level, which is the highs of the range. This market's setting itself up to make an attempt to continue higher. It has been relatively strong more recently, and it may be this market will push up towards this new level up here over the next few weeks or so. Bitcoin futures continue to trade within this range that I marked many weeks ago. It's a range where the market has consolidated previously. It looked quite vulnerable down here, found some support on this bar, and since then it has pushed higher and up towards the highs of the range. I do expect there'll be some resistance where the market gapped down here, which has trapped people probably up here. So there's most likely going to be some supply up here. The market did test for supply below the previous bar's close earlier in the week and then pushed up to close back adjacent to the previous close and at the highs of the range. The market does look well placed to push higher. I won't be surprised if there is a little dip lower again next week before there is a serious attempt to push higher, because there is likely to be some supply above, which is going to be difficult to negotiate through. It may be the market just pushes up a little, then pulls back, and then makes its real push higher. And this push higher and pull back will be a way of absorbing supply from those who are seeking to get out where the market gapped down previously. It's certainly looking stronger than it has done for some time now. Volumes remain about the average, so this is genuine trading, and it's certainly looking less vulnerable than it has done for some time. Just back to the US dollar index futures quickly. I'm expecting this market will likely trade sideways within the range of this bar, at least next week, in like this, or the inverse. But trade sideways within this bar's range to a large degree, particularly while there's uncertainty in the market. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Back again next week. See ya.